Sylvie Bello, so could you just tell us a little bit more about you and the organization that you represented called the Cameroon American Council, and some of the work and achievements that you've done in the community?
Thank you so much, Abdullah. Thank you for having me. Hello from Washington, D.C., the
Yeah,
nation's capital.
yeah.
So I'm Sylvie Bello, like you said, and I'm with the Cameroon American Council, founded this small organization about 10 years ago. And we have a very simple mission. Our mission is really to get all of our Cameroonians and Africans connected to institutions. Our mission is to build capacity, build relevance, and build visibility in African communities at home and abroad. So, and with that, we work on several aspects. Currently, we're doing some immigration policy work. We also work on certain aspects of foreign policy, which deals with maybe like diaspora. So, for instance, when the Ebola outbreak hit, we were very concerned about what is the diaspora response and what are some diaspora immigration relief. So we try to look at everything from a diaspora perspective. The Washington Post calls us the first program of its kind because we were able to look at the Obamacare, which is the Affordable Care Act from Obama, and we
Yeah.
were able to parse it and find, where African immigrants fit in. And we actually found a loophole, which was the fact that Social Security Administration provides eligibility for Obamacare did not integrate African immigrants. So the White House at the time, Obama, was very impressed and gave us an award and invited us, and the Washington Post wrote about it. So we've done a lot of innovative thinking around African immigrants.
That's great work. And I'm sure you and your team, works nonstop, and you guys are very passionate about that. So 10 years ago, so about 2009, so it's been quite some time that your team has been helping the community. When did you move here from Cameroon, and how often do you travel back?
So hi, we are. So I came with my dad as a teenager.
Okay.
Um, Early on, travel back a little bit more consistently because I would go with my parents. But as I became after college and sort of working, it became harder and harder.
Yeah.
I mean, like in college, when you're in school, you get like all summer off and all and longer winter breaks. But when you start working, those vacation times reduce. So that also reduced my traveling back home.
Yeah.
Now, in the last 10 years, it has become nearly impossible, mostly because when you run your own show, you can just, file, your vacation time, which I should say that a lot of activists do need self-care, and I do see family and friends in other ways. At this point, many of them are already either in the US or in Canada, and those are shorter trips. So in the last 4 years, 3 to 4 years, it has become pretty much non-existent for me
Yeah.
because of the kind of work that I do, one, but also because of the war in Cameroon.
Mm.
The Cameroon government has been imprisoning, and going after diasporans who come home, who they perceive to be activists like me, or who they perceive to be, even if
Whoa.
they're not activists, but who they perceive to be not pro-government. So, for instance, there's a famous story, not story as in not true, but there's a famous account of a New Yorker, a professor in New York, who went to Cameroon and was imprisoned for months. And his college had to write, and everybody had to write we had to go to Congress to push Congress. His name is Patrice Ngana. The Cameroon American Council actually got a resolution for him, a congressional resolution. So traveling to Cameroon specifically in the last 3 years has been very strenuous and just stressful for the diaspora. I mean, this is the time where a lot of us would be going, but a lot of people are not planning to go. This year it is reduced significantly. But Cameroon is in our heart. That's why my organization is not named Cameroonian. It's named Cameroon for the country. So it is always near and dear to us.
And I asked the travel back question because, for us immigrant Africans here in the US and abroad, I feel like there's two groups of us, some that travel back super, super, super often. Every chance, leisure break that they get, they go back. And, some just for many reasons are incapable of going, just choice, and just some obviously, immigration status and income status just prevent that. But like your case, as as you were talking, that it's very interesting because obviously in many regards you could be considered a politician in some sort, and if not a politician exactly, at least you like comment on it, and you're much involved in politics and in people. And obviously with some of our nations back home, freedom of speech is non-existent, and obviously with today's global world, and all of us are very opinionated. It's very easy to kind of identify like who is speaking out against particular political figures, and I have heard of some stories where people go on the internet, speak about certain political leaders in these African nations, and then go back home and get into trouble, kind of what you alluded to moments ago.
Look at Shawore, right? You're out in New York. Look at the Sahara Reporter's Shawore.
Yeah.
His family, the New York Post wrote about him. His family's in New Jersey. He works out in New York, went to Nigeria. He's been in jail for 9 months. I mean, he came out for a little bit and has been back in jail for 9 months. So there's a real credible fear for diasporans who may not even be politicians, who may be like Shawore, who's a journalist, or like me, who's an activist, speak up, or Patrice Ngana, whom I mentioned, the Cameroonian, speak up and are picked up. Like basically, you speak up and you're picked up to get there, which has to change. I agree with you.
Man, what are we gonna do about that? Because right, we've got major ties to back home, so like I can see that becoming a real issue, and I wonder if there are some solutions for that. Do you know of any?
Yes, absolutely. There are solutions. And one of them is that when you look at the economy of all of our countries, and by all, I don't only mean African, I mean Mexico, I mean India, when you look at the remittance analysis that comes out year in and year out, remittance from diasporans back to the homeland make a significant dent into those economies. So those politicians are actively benefiting from our work here, be it as like you in media or activists, or the next panelist you're going to have on, Christelle, who works for the city government, so we need to find a common ground, right, where we still have our Africanness, and then we still incorporate better practices around the world. There's some things the West can learn from Africa. There's some things that we're, like you said, being here, we're learning from them, and to incorporate it back home. They also, the politicians back home and the government back home also needs to realize that we on this side are pushing our newfound countries to support them in foreign aid, right? So not only, like for instance, I mentioned the Ebola affected countries, we pushed the American government to provide immigration status, the TPS, to Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. The president of Sierra Leone was, not Sierra Leone, well, the president of Sierra Leone, yes, but especially the president of Liberia was active in getting the American government, in addition to the UN, to provide funds for Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, right? So, we need to look for better ways on how we can collaborate, with the government, because the governments of Cameroon and the other countries need to realize that when you, imprison us for speech, is that same speech that we use to push for your foreign aid for those countries, is the same speech that we use to get jobs for those remittances. So they're getting monies out of us two ways, through remittances and through remittances and through foreign aid that we lobby for.